UFC Paris is this weekend, and we got Nasruddin Imavov versus Caio Borrahlo as the main event. Mauricio Ruffy, Denis as the co-main event. And even though it sucks that we don't have any pay-per-views for September, at least we get some pretty good fight nights. And, well, at least fight night main events. And I'm just going to come right from the start, and I'm going to say Nasruddin Imavov and Mauricio Ruffy are going to be the ones getting dubs at UFC Paris this weekend. And I'm going to keep explaining why I think that. But, yeah, I think Mauricio Ruffy is going to be the only fighting nerd that gets the dub. And as I kind of break down this, first you have Nasruddin Imavov and Caio Borrahlo. And the interesting thing about this is that Nasruddin Imavov really, if he was a little bit more famous, then he would have already been confirmed to be fighting for the title next. But it's just because no one fucking knows who he is and he really doesn't say anything. So, because really you look at his resume, and I think the last time he lost was to Sean Strickland, which was a short notice fight, which also is kind of more short notice for Strickland. But still, that was almost 3 years ago. It was January 2023. And then after that, I think he had he had a no contest with Chris Curtis. But then after that, he beat Roman Dolidze by majority decision, which is kind of not that impressive considering he just got absolutely fucked by Fluffy. But still, good win. And also, it was a few years ago. Then he goes and beats, who did he beat? Jared Cannonier. He goes and finishes Jared Cannonier, even though that was a terrible stoppage. He still beat him, and so it was a third round TKO. Beats Jared Cannonier, which again, maybe his resume isn't that impressive, because MVP just went and starched Jared Cannonier too. But still, this was when they were a little bit better. I guess you could say Imavov was the first to do it, kind of. But he beats Roman Dolidze when Roman Dolidze was actually on a pretty good win streak, I think. Or he had just lost Vittori. Low-key, I'm spewing absolute bullshit. Mainly what I'm talking about is he finishes Jared Cannonier, who's a solid contender. He was number 4 at the time. He goes and beats Brendan Allen, which is actually a much better win than people think. Because Brendan Allen is actually really underrated. He's got a very good ground game. His striking is also very underrated. And I think that he just happened to fight two really good guys in Imavov and Anthony Hernandez, which is the only two guys that he's lost to in the last 5 years or something. Then he goes and knocks out Izzy in the second round. So really, which also Brendan Allen was a guy that was number 7 and had a real opportunity. He actually deserved to fight somebody in the top 5 and possibly get one win away from a title shot. So that's still a great win. And then Izzy, former champ, even though he's out of his prime, he had just come off a competitive fight with Dricus. And if this was anybody else that was somewhat popular, they'd be getting the title shot. Then you have Caio Borrahlo, whose resume is even worse. I think he beat, I don't know if it was necessarily in this order, but he beat Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Pretty good win, I guess. And then, who did he beat? He beat, what's his name? Fucking Paul Craig, yeah. He goes and knocks out Paul Craig, who hasn't knocked out Paul Craig. And then he goes and beats Jared Cannonier. And this is where Imavov, is levels above Caio in terms of resume and being more deserving of a title shot. And it's also, I think this is some fighting nerd privilege, which is a real thing now. But yeah, Caio, his only ranked wins, which Paul Craig's not even in the rankings anymore, is Paul Craig, Jared Cannonier. And he fought Jared Cannonier over a year ago. Hasn't done shit since. Really, I thought that Caio needed to fight somebody outside the top 5, to kind of re-immerse himself into the actual title contention. I feel like he's kind of just being gifted this a little bit, because I think there's other guys that are much more deserving. But and then now Jared Cannonier, same thing. Now he just lost to MVP. He's now, I think, number 11 in the middleweight rankings. So really, Caio has one win in the top 15. Which, again, this has nothing, like, really this means shit when they actually get in the octagon and actually fight. But I still think that Nasruddin Imavov is going to win this fight. I think by unanimous decision. Because you see with Kaio, he's a good striker. He's pretty well-rounded. He's not as dynamic in the pocket as Imavov. I think Imavov is very underrated with his boxing, and we've seen a lot whenever, you get into that close quarters, like, hand-to-hand combat, it's just straight up hands. Imavov actually pieces people up. And you even look when he lost to Sean Strickland. And Sean Strickland is probably, even though he had a terrible performance against Strikers, he's probably one of the best boxers, especially one of the best defensive boxers in the division. One of the best defensive fighters in the UFC, possibly one of the best boxers in the middleweight division. And there were some times where Imavov was kind of piecing him up, and Strickland had to like clinch a little bit and held him against defensive points in that fight. And then you even look, same thing against Jared Cannonier, where it's kind of even and competitive, but Imavov seems to always find that one shot that kind of like stuns somebody, or he finds that combination that really, puts him on notice. And that's kind of what happened with Jared Cannonier, and he ended up finishing him, which, yeah, we know it's a terrible stoppage, but still, he had him hurt. And then he was piecing up Brendan Allen a little bit, which actually, it wasn't as much as in the Jared Cannonier fight or even against Izzy, but he actually showed off how good his grappling is. So that's also not an issue for the fight against Kaio. I think it's going to be mainly a stand-up fight, but even if the fight gets to that, I think Imavov could even do pretty well in terms of like trying to take down Kaio and maybe control him. That's still an option. But then, obviously against Izzy, one of the best strikers of all time, which first of all, I'm going to make a separate video of how fucking overrated Izzy's been all these years. But still, whenever they would get into the pocket, he would piece him up. And like the thing is, he's fast too and pretty powerful. Whenever he kind of fainted a takedown and then came with that uppercut, and that shit was fast. And then obviously the knockout, which that was, he's coming off a stance switch. And, I just think his ability to really catch people in the pocket and in close quarters, I think is going to be something Kaio's not ready for. Because I think Imavov is going to it'll probably be leaning towards Kaio earlier in the fight, but I think as it goes on, Imavov is going to establish some dominance, kind of get in his face a little bit and start unleashing combinations. Because also I realized, like, maybe except for John Silva and Mauricio Ruffy, is that Prates and Kaio, whenever someone unleashes a combination, they shell up with kind of the Philly shell a little bit, and they'll just kind of try to block everything. And that's like where Ian Gary was able to get off on Prates pretty easily. Pause. But yeah, because all he did was just block, and he'd almost use that kind of guard, and he wouldn't counter as much. Kaio, I think, kind of does the same thing, where mainly his shots are better whenever he's sort of at range, kind of going at his own pace, which I think Imavov's going to disrupt that. And I just think his he's pretty good at range too, Imavov, but I think he's just going to get in his face at some point and start unleashing on him. I don't really see him finishing Kaio, but maybe like Kaio wins the first 2 rounds, maybe Imavov wins the last 3. It's kind of what I'm thinking. So yeah, I have Nasruddin Imavov by unanimous decision. He's kind of slept on, and I think Kaio has that fighting nerd privilege. He's a little bit overrated. But the one dude I don't think is overrated, Mauricio Ruffy. So when we get to the co-main, Mauricio Ruffy is going to absolutely fucking starch Benoit Saint-Denis. Because first of all, I think Benoit Saint-Denis is extremely overrated. He never was that good. And I think Ruffy actually is as good as he seems. Because you rarely have guys like Ruffy and John Silva even, where they just show up and they almost look invincible. You know what I mean? Like, and it is cool that he looks like Conor and moves like Conor and kind of fights like him. But we've seen Benoit Saint-Denis get absolutely pieced up by Dustin Poirier. Like when Dustin Poirier let his hands go and stopped trying to jump the fuck-ass guillotines, he was piecing him up and he finished him. And then you look against Renato Moicano, got ragdolled on the ground, which isn't going to be a factor in this fight. But I think even Moicano was having success on the feet. And Benoit Saint-Denis is not going to be a threat to Mauricio Ruffy on the ground. And I think Ruffy's going to be one of those guys like Prates and John Silva, where they actually have pretty sneaky like grappling and transitions, and where they can get back up to their feet, or even like lock up a submission that nobody expects, that kind of thing. So I don't think the grappling is going to be a problem for Ruffy. And then I think it's a complete mismatch on the feet. Because then, like you see again with Ruffy, how he just keeps every dude that he fights, which Jan Top, the only dude that he didn't finish, was like 20 pounds heavier than him, which he would have gone cold if he was actually, made the weight. But it's just been complete dominance every time we've seen Ruffy. And I think it's just, there's an element when you make these predictions that you have to trust a fighter, because he hasn't faced the best competition, which I think Benoit Saint-Denis isn't great competition, so that's why I still think he's going to put him out. But it's just like with Ruffy, he seems like the new generation of guys along with Ilia Topuria, which I'm not saying he's Ilia Topuria, but he's with that new generation of fighters that are just more skillful, that are just a different level from the guys that they're facing. And I think that's going to be on display against Benoit Saint-Denis, whose striking is not good. Because also, even at the Canada event in UFC 315 against, I forgot his name, it was like Kyle Prepelek. I might be fucking butchering his name, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And he came in from a different organization on short note, or like a week's notice, and he was actually having some decent success on the feet against BSD. So yeah, I think Ruffy's going to KO BSD in the first round, and he's going to end up fighting somebody in the top 5 next. He's going to get a massive fight, is what I think is going to happen. Really, Kaio might be the worst fighting nerd, in my opinion. I think Ruffy is legit, and he's going to be good. John Silva is probably the best out of the fighting nerds. He'll be champ within the next year, definitely. And then Prates kind of cemented himself again as a legit contender at welterweight. I just don't think Kaio has anything that's that impressive. Like you see against Carlos Prates, John Silva, Mauricio Ruffy, they have like absolutely dominant performances, crazy highlight reel knockouts. You don't really see Kaio doing that. So yeah, those are my predictions. Nasruddin Imavov by unanimous decision, Mauricio Ruffy by first round KO. So when that shit actually happens, come back to this. I'm just kidding. It could go either way. But, I'm actually very confident, though, that Mauricio Ruffy is going to beat BSD. But Kyle Imavov, really, it could, I guess, go either way. But I do lean towards Imavov. So put in the comments who you guys think is going to win. And I'm going to be doing more videos like this, too. And, yeah, I'll see y'all soon.